Elena Martinez had always been different from other soldiers. While her fellow trainees struggled to hit targets at 300 meters, she could place 3 bullets through the same hole at twice that distance. Her hands never shook, her breathing was perfectly controlled, and her focus was absolute. At 24, she had already earned a reputation as one of the most promising snipers in the military. The mountain training facility was buzzing with nervous energy that morning. Tomorrow would begin the final qualification test, a grueling 3-day examination that would determine who among the 30 candidates would earn the coveted position in the elite sniper unit. Elena had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, sacrificing everything for her dream. She arrived at the armory before dawn, as was her routine. The building was empty except for the night guard, who nodded at her familiar face. Elena made her way to locker 47, where her custom rifle waited. The weapon was a masterpiece of precision engineering, a bolt-action rifle she had spent months fine-tuning. Every component had been carefully selected and adjusted to work in perfect harmony with her shooting style. But something was wrong. The moment her fingers touched the rifle, she knew. The weight distribution felt off, subtle but unmistakable to someone who had handled this weapon thousands of times. Elena's heart began to race as she examined the rifle more closely under the armory's fluorescent lights. The scope mount had been loosened, just enough to affect accuracy without being obvious to a casual inspection. The barrel bore showed signs of tampering, tiny scratches that suggested someone had inserted an object to damage the rifling. Most concerning of all, the trigger mechanism felt different. The crisp break she had spent weeks perfecting, now mushy and unpredictable. Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. This wasn't random vandalism or an accident. Someone had deliberately sabotaged her rifle, and they had done it with enough skill to make it look like natural wear or maintenance issues. The question was who, and more importantly, why? She thought about her fellow candidates. There was Marcus Chen, whose family had a long military tradition and who had made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in combat roles. He had the technical knowledge to perform such sabotage, having worked as a gunsmith before joining the military. Then there was David Rodriguez, who had been her closest competitor throughout training. The pressure to succeed was intense for all of them, and Elena knew that some people would do anything to eliminate the competition. But suspicions wouldn't help her now. The qualification test would begin in 18 hours, and she needed a functioning rifle. Elena quickly documented the damage with her phone, taking detailed photos from every angle. The evidence might be useful later, but right now she had a more pressing problem. The armory supervisor, Sergeant Williams, arrived an hour later to find Elena still examining her rifle. A gruff man in his 50s with decades of experience, Williams had seen every trick and excuse in the book from soldiers trying to explain away their equipment failures. "Problem with your weapon, Martinez?" he asked, his tone suggesting he expected to hear another sob story about mysteriously malfunctioning equipment. Elena showed him the evidence calmly and professionally. Williams's expression changed as he examined the rifle himself. His experienced eyes quickly spotted the signs of deliberate tampering that a casual observer might miss. "This is sabotage," he admitted grimly. "Question is, can you prove who did it?" Elena shook her head. "No direct evidence, Sergeant, but I need to know what my options are for tomorrow's test." Williams considered the situation. Military regulations were clear about equipment failures during qualification tests. If a soldier's primary weapon malfunctioned, they could request a backup rifle from the armory's standard inventory. However, these rifles would be basic models, far inferior to the custom weapons most candidates had spent months preparing. "I can issue you a backup," Williams said slowly, "but you know it won't shoot like this one. Your zero will be off. The trigger pull will be different. The balance will feel wrong. Are you sure you want to risk it?" Elena had 2 choices. She could file a complaint about the sabotage, request an investigation, and likely receive a postponement of her test while the matter was resolved. This would delay her qualification by months, assuming she could even prove the sabotage had occurred. Alternatively, she could take the backup rifle and compete on an uneven playing field, hoping her raw skill could overcome the equipment disadvantage. But there was a third option, one that would require every ounce of her mechanical knowledge and determination. "Sergeant, I need access to the workshop. I'm going to rebuild this rifle from scratch." Williams raised an eyebrow. "Martinez, you've got less than 18 hours. Even if you had all the parts, which you don't, it would take days to properly rebuild a precision rifle. Then I'll have to work faster than anyone has before." The workshop was located in the basement of the armory building, a cramped space filled with tools, spare parts, and the smell of gun oil. Elena had spent countless hours here during her training, learning to maintain and repair her equipment. Now, that knowledge would be put to the ultimate test. She began by completely disassembling the rifle, laying out each component on a clean workbench. The damage was even worse than she had initially thought. The barrel was definitely compromised. Tiny metal filings indicating that an abrasive had been forced through the bore. The trigger components had been subtly bent, enough to ruin their precision without making the damage obvious. Even the stock had been weakened, with stress cracks carefully hidden where they wouldn't be immediately visible. Elena realized that this wasn't just sabotage. It was a sophisticated attempt to ensure her complete failure during the test. Whoever had done this wanted her to not just lose, but to fail spectacularly in a way that would end her career aspirations. She began with the barrel, the heart of any precision rifle. The armory's parts inventory included several barrels in the correct caliber, but none were of the same quality as her original. Elena selected the best of the available options and began the painstaking process of fitting it to her receiver. This involved careful measurement, precise machining, and multiple test fittings to ensure perfect alignment. As she worked, other soldiers began to arrive for their pre-test preparations. Word spread quickly through the facility that Elena was essentially rebuilding her entire rifle the night before qualification. Some came to watch, curious about her chances of success. Others made snide comments about excuses and desperation. Marcus Chen appeared in the doorway around noon, his expression unreadable. "Heard you had some equipment problems," he said casually. Elena didn't look up from her work, her hands steady as she adjusted the barrel's headspace. "Nothing I can't handle." "Shame about your rifle," Chen continued. "All that custom work down the drain. Must be frustrating to start over with basic parts." There was something in his tone that made Elena's suspicions crystallize. The way he emphasized custom work and basic parts suggested an intimate knowledge of what exactly had been damaged. She filed this information away for later, but continued working without giving any sign of her thoughts. "Sometimes setbacks make us stronger," Elena replied evenly. "We'll see tomorrow." Chen lingered for a few more minutes before leaving, and Elena noticed he seemed disappointed by her calm reaction. She was increasingly certain she had found her saboteur, but proof would have to wait. The afternoon brought new challenges as Elena worked on the trigger assembly. The damaged components were beyond repair, forcing her to construct an entirely new trigger system from spare parts. This was delicate work that required precise adjustment to achieve the crisp, predictable break that precision shooting demanded. Sergeant Williams stopped by periodically to check on her progress. As the hours passed, his skeptical expression gradually changed to something approaching amazement. Elena's mechanical skills were impressive, but more than that, her focus and determination under pressure were remarkable. "Most people would have given up by now," he observed as Elena carefully adjusted the trigger's engagement surface with a small file. "Most people haven't dreamed of this opportunity for as long as I have," Elena replied, her attention never wavering from her work. As evening approached, Elena faced her biggest challenge yet, zeroing the rebuilt rifle. Even the best mechanical assembly was useless without proper adjustment of the scope and confirmation that the rifle shot accurately. The range was officially closed for the night, but Williams bent the rules and allowed Elena to conduct a brief test session. The first shots were discouraging. Her carefully rebuilt rifle was shooting groups that spread across several inches at 100 meters, far below the precision required for sniper work. Elena made careful adjustments to the scope, analyzing each shot and making incremental changes to bring the point of impact in line with her point of aim. It was nearly midnight when she finally achieved a satisfactory 0. The rebuilt rifle would never match the precision of her original custom weapon, but it was shooting well enough to compete. Elena had transformed a pile of damaged parts into a functional precision rifle in less than 20 hours, a feat that should have taken weeks under normal circumstances. As she cleaned and prepared the rifle for tomorrow's test, Elena reflected on what had driven her to this extreme effort. It wasn't just about winning the competition or earning the sniper position, though both were important to her. It was about proving that she belonged, that her skills and determination were enough to overcome any obstacle. The saboteur, whoever they were, had intended to end her dreams with a few minutes of malicious work. Instead, they had given Elena an opportunity to demonstrate something far more valuable than mere marksmanship: the ability to adapt, overcome, and rebuild under impossible pressure. Tomorrow would bring the ultimate test. Elena would face the qualification course with a rifle she had rebuilt in a single day against competitors who had spent months preparing with their carefully tuned weapons. The odds were stacked against her, but she had already overcome what should have been an impossible challenge. As she locked the rebuilt rifle away and headed to her quarters for a few hours of sleep, Elena felt a quiet confidence building within her. She had been tested by Sabotage and had emerged stronger. Whatever tomorrow's challenges might bring, she was ready to face them with skills honed not just by training, but by the crucible of adversity. The qualification test would determine more than just who earned the sniper position. It would prove whether Elena's belief in herself was justified, and whether her rebuilt rifle could perform when everything was on the line. Dawn broke cold and gray over the mountain training facility, with a thick fog rolling through the valleys that would challenge even experienced marksmen. Elena stood with the 29 other candidates at the starting line of the qualification course, her rebuilt rifle slung across her shoulder. She had managed only 3 hours of sleep, but her mind was sharp and focused. Colonel Sarah Davidson, the commanding officer overseeing the qualification test, addressed the assembled candidates. A legendary sniper herself with multiple combat deployments, Davidson commanded respect from every soldier present. Her weathered face showed no emotion as she explained the rules that would determine their fates. "Ladies and gentlemen, the next 3 days will test every aspect of your training. You will face precision shooting at distances up to 800 meters, moving targets, adverse weather conditions, and situations designed to simulate real combat stress. Only the top 5 candidates will advance to the final selection phase." Elena listened intently as Davidson outlined the scoring system. Each candidate started with 1,000 points, losing points for missed shots, slow engagement times, and tactical errors. The qualification required a minimum score of 850 points, with additional challenges for those competing for the top positions. "Your first challenge begins immediately," Davidson announced. "The fog has reduced visibility to less than 200 meters in some areas. You will navigate to 5 shooting positions scattered across the range, engaging targets at each location. Time limit is 4 hours. Begin." The candidates dispersed quickly, each following a different route through the mountainous terrain. Elena had studied the range maps extensively and chose a path that would take advantage of higher ground, hoping to get above the worst of the fog. As she climbed, her rebuilt rifle felt different from her original weapon, but she forced herself to adapt rather than dwelling on what she had lost. The first shooting position was located on a ridge overlooking a valley. Through her scope, Elena could barely make out the silhouette of targets positioned 400 meters away. The fog created an almost ethereal scene, with targets appearing and disappearing as the mist shifted with the morning breeze. Elena settled into a prone position, adjusting her rifle's bipod and checking her range card. She had calculated ballistics data for her rebuilt rifle during the brief test session the night before, but real-world conditions were always different from range estimates. She would have to trust her experience and make adjustments as needed. Her first shot rang out across the valley, the sound echoing off the surrounding peaks. Through her scope, Elena saw the bullet impact just slightly high and to the right of her intended target. She made a mental note of the correction needed and fired again. This time, the target went down cleanly. As Elena engaged the remaining targets at the first position, she noticed other candidates struggling with the challenging conditions. Marcus Chen, positioned on a ridge to her left, fired several shots before successfully engaging his targets. David Rodriguez, visible on the opposite side of the valley, appeared to be having similar difficulties. The fog began to lift as Elena moved to the second position, revealing the true complexity of the course. Targets were positioned not just at various distances, but also at different elevations and angles, forcing shooters to account for complex ballistics calculations. Some targets were partially concealed behind rocks or vegetation, requiring precise shot placement to score hits. At the second position, Elena faced her most challenging shots yet. 3 targets were positioned at 600 meters, but only small portions of each were visible through gaps in the terrain. The rebuilt rifle's zero was holding true, but Elena noticed that her shots were grouping slightly differently than with her original weapon. She made careful mental adjustments to her hold and sight picture. The targets fell in quick succession, Elena's shots precise despite the equipment challenges. Her confidence began to build as she realized that her hasty rebuild had produced a rifle capable of competition-level accuracy. It might not have the absolute precision of her original weapon, but it was performing far better than anyone had expected. Moving between positions required careful navigation through unfamiliar terrain while carrying full combat gear. Elena's physical conditioning served her well as she climbed steep slopes and traversed rocky ground without becoming winded. Some of her competitors were already showing signs of fatigue, their shooting suffering as a result. The third position presented a new challenge: moving targets. Remote-controlled vehicles carried target boards across Elena's field of view at varying speeds and distances. This test required not just marksmanship skills, but also the ability to track moving objects and calculate lead angles. Elena's first moving target appeared at 300 meters, traveling left to right at approximately 10 miles per hour. She tracked the target smoothly, leading it by the calculated amount before squeezing the trigger. The target stopped immediately, indicating a successful hit. 2 more targets followed at different speeds and directions, each requiring split-second calculations and precise execution. As the morning progressed, Elena began to notice a pattern in the challenges. Each position tested different aspects of sniper skills, from precision shooting to fieldcraft to tactical thinking. The course designers had created a comprehensive evaluation that would identify not just good shooters, but complete snipers capable of operating effectively in combat situations. The fourth position was located in a densely wooded area where Elena had to identify and engage targets that were camouflaged among the trees. This challenge tested her ability to spot threats that didn't want to be seen, a critical skill for military snipers. Elena took her time, systematically scanning each sector and identifying subtle signs that revealed target locations. Her rebuilt rifle continued to perform reliably, though Elena noticed that the trigger felt slightly different in the cold mountain air. She adapted her technique accordingly, maintaining consistent shot placement despite the equipment variables. Each successful engagement built her confidence and proved that her desperate overnight rebuild had been successful. By the time Elena reached the fifth and final position of the day's challenge, the fog had completely lifted, revealing a stunning mountain panorama. The final targets were positioned at 800 meters, the maximum distance for the qualification test. At this range, even small errors in equipment, ammunition, or technique could result in missed shots. Elena took extra time to establish a stable shooting position, using her pack to create additional support for her rifle. She studied the wind indicators scattered across the range, noting how the mountain terrain created complex air currents that would affect her bullet's flight path. The rebuilt rifle's ballistics would be slightly different from her original weapon at this extended range, requiring careful adjustment. Her first shot at 800 meters was a miss, the bullet impacting low and left of the target. Elena analyzed the miss, considering factors like bullet drop, wind drift, and the rifle's characteristics. She made corrections to her scope settings and fired again. This shot was closer, but still not a hit. The pressure was mounting as Elena prepared for her third shot. Other candidates who had reached this position were also struggling with the extreme range, and she could hear the sounds of missed shots echoing across the mountains. Elena forced herself to slow down, focusing on proper fundamentals rather than rushing her shots. Her third shot connected, and Elena felt a surge of satisfaction as the distant target fell. She engaged the remaining long-range targets with growing confidence, each hit proving that her rebuilt rifle was capable of precision at any distance required by the qualification test. As Elena completed the first day's challenges and began the trek back to base camp, she reflected on her performance. The rebuilt rifle had exceeded all expectations, shooting accurately despite being assembled in a single frantic night. More importantly, Elena had proven to herself that she could adapt and overcome equipment problems without losing her competitive edge. Back at the base camp, scores were posted on a bulletin board that drew nervous crowds throughout the evening. Elena was pleased to see her name in third place, behind only two experienced candidates who had been predicted to dominate the competition. Several other candidates, including Marcus Chen, had struggled with the day's challenges and found themselves in the lower half of the rankings. The second day brought new challenges designed to test tactical skills and decision-making under pressure. Candidates were presented with complex scenarios requiring them to identify priority targets, account for collateral damage concerns, and engage multiple threats in the correct sequence. Elena's rebuilt rifle continued to perform flawlessly as she navigated these tactical challenges. The overnight rebuild had given her something beyond just a functional weapon. It had given her unshakable confidence in her ability to overcome any obstacle. While other candidates second-guessed themselves or hesitated under pressure, Elena approached each challenge with calm determination. The psychological pressure intensified as the candidate field was narrowed down. By the end of the second day, only 15 candidates remained in contention for the 5 available positions. Elena held on to her third-place ranking, but the competition was fierce and small mistakes could result in dramatic changes in the standings. The final day would bring the ultimate test, a comprehensive scenario that combined all the skills tested over the previous days into a single, high-pressure challenge. Elena cleaned and prepared her rebuilt rifle one last time, knowing that tomorrow would determine whether her incredible journey from sabotage to success would end in triumph or disappointment. As she settled into her sleeping bag that night, Elena thought about the person who had sabotaged her original rifle. Their malicious act had been intended to end her dreams, but instead, it had forced her to discover capabilities she never knew she possessed. The rebuilt rifle resting beside her was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of her determination to succeed regardless of the obstacles placed in her path. Tomorrow would bring the final test, and Elena was ready to prove that sometimes the greatest victories come not from having perfect equipment, but from having the skill and determination to rebuild when everything falls apart. The final day of qualification testing arrived with perfect clarity, as if the mountain itself had decided to provide ideal conditions for the ultimate challenge. Elena woke before dawn, her rebuilt rifle beside her, feeling a sense of calm determination that surprised her. After 2 days of proving her adapted weapon could compete at the highest level, she was ready for whatever the final test would bring. Colonel Davidson gathered the 15 remaining candidates at 0600 hours, her expression more serious than ever. Behind her, a large tactical map displayed an intricate course layout that would test every aspect of their training simultaneously. Today's final exercise is called Urban Overwatch, Davidson announced. You will face a scenario based on real combat situations our snipers have encountered in urban environments. The course includes 200 targets at distances ranging from 100 to 1,000 meters, moving targets, time-critical shots, and targets that require identification before engagement. Elena studied the map intently, noting the complex layout that simulated a city environment with buildings, vehicles, and civilian areas marked as no-fire zones. This was far more comprehensive than anything they had faced during the previous days. The twist, Davidson continued, is that you must engage targets in a specific sequence based on tactical priorities. Miss the sequence or engage a wrong target, and you lose points. Most importantly, this exercise rewards consistency over speed. A sniper who takes careful, precise shots will score better than one who rushes. Elena felt a surge of confidence. Her rebuilt rifle had proven its accuracy over the past 2 days, and the emphasis on precision rather than speed played to her strengths. She had always been methodical in her approach to shooting, preferring to take extra time to ensure each shot was perfect. The candidates were positioned at different starting points around the course, each facing a unique sequence of challenges. Elena found herself assigned to Building 7, a 4-story structure that provided excellent overwatch positions, but also required her to move between floors to engage targets at different angles. As the exercise began, Elena established her first position on the top floor, studying the urban landscape through her scope. Her rebuilt rifle felt natural now after 2 days of intensive use, its characteristics as familiar as her original weapon had been. The trigger broke cleanly, the scope held its zero perfectly, and the overall balance suited her shooting style. The first target appeared 400 meters away, marked as a high-priority threat in a simulated sniper position. Elena took her time, confirming the target identification and calculating the ballistic solution before firing. The shot was perfect, center mass, and the electronic scoring system immediately confirmed the hit. Target after target fell to Elena's precise fire as she worked through the tactical sequence. Moving targets on the simulated streets, stationary threats in windows and doorways, and priority targets that required immediate engagement all succumbed to her rebuilt rifle's accuracy. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, and executed with mechanical precision. As Elena moved to her second firing position on the 3rd floor, she noticed something remarkable happening. Her shooting rhythm had found a perfect groove, with each shot flowing naturally into the next. The rebuilt rifle seemed to anticipate her needs, responding to her inputs with unwavering consistency. The exercise demanded not just marksmanship, but also tactical decision-making. When civilian targets appeared mixed among legitimate threats, Elena had to make split-second identification decisions. When multiple targets presented themselves simultaneously, she had to prioritize based on tactical doctrine and the specific scenario parameters. One particularly challenging sequence required Elena to engage a series of moving vehicles while avoiding civilian cars marked with specific identifiers. The targets moved at different speeds and directions, requiring complex lead calculations and perfect timing. Elena's rebuilt rifle handled these challenges flawlessly, each shot finding its mark despite the demanding conditions. By midday, Elena had completed over half the course and hadn't missed a single required target. Her shot count stood at 89 successful engagements, each one a testament to both her skill and her rifle's rebuilt precision. She began to realize that she was achieving something exceptional, a level of consistency that exceeded even her own expectations. From her position on the second floor, Elena could occasionally see other candidates working through their sections of the course. The sound of missed shots echoed through the urban environment as her competitors struggled with the demanding challenges. Elena noticed that Marcus Chen, visible in Building 3, appeared to be having significant difficulties with the moving targets. The afternoon brought Elena's most challenging test yet, a series of extreme-range shots at targets positioned over 800 meters away. These targets were small, partially concealed, and required perfect execution to hit. Elena's rebuilt rifle had performed well at long range during the previous day's testing, but these shots would push both her skills and her equipment to their limits. Elena took extra time to establish a rock-solid shooting position, using every available support to stabilize her rifle. She studied the wind conditions carefully, noting how the urban environment created complex air currents that would affect her bullet's flight path. The rebuilt rifle's ballistics data, calculated during her hurried test session 2 nights ago, would be put to the ultimate test. Her first extreme-range shot was perfect, dropping a target at 850 meters with a center hit. Elena felt a surge of excitement as she realized her rebuilt weapon was performing at a level that matched or exceeded her original custom rifle. The desperate overnight rebuild had produced something truly special. Shot after shot connected at long range, each one building Elena's confidence and adding to her growing streak of successful engagements. The rebuilt rifle's consistency was remarkable, delivering the same point of impact shot after shot, despite the demanding conditions and extended firing schedule. As Elena moved to her final firing position in the building's basement, tackling targets in the underground parking garage scenario, she realized she was approaching something unprecedented. Her successful shot count had reached 150, with only a few more targets remaining in her assigned sequence. Every shot had found its mark, creating a streak of accuracy that was approaching legendary proportions. The final targets were positioned in challenging low-light conditions, simulating the basement environment where snipers might need to engage threats hiding among vehicles and concrete pillars. Elena's rebuilt rifle, equipped with a high-quality scope, handled these conditions admirably. Each shot was as precise as those that had come before. When Elena fired her final shot of the exercise, hitting a small target at 200 meters through a narrow gap between concrete barriers, the electronic scoring system registered her 167th consecutive hit. She had completed the entire course without a single miss, something that had never been achieved in the history of the qualification program. Colonel Davidson appeared at Elena's position moments after the final shot, her expression mixing amazement with professional respect. "Martinez, I've been overseeing sniper qualifications for 15 years, and I've never seen a performance like this. 167 consecutive hits with perfect target identification and tactical sequence execution." Elena set down her rebuilt rifle and stood at attention, still processing the magnitude of what she had accomplished. The weapon that had been assembled from spare parts in a single desperate night had delivered a perfect performance when it mattered most. "Permission to ask a question, ma'am?" Elena requested. "Granted. What was the previous record for consecutive hits on this course?" Davidson smiled slightly. "The previous record was 89 consecutive hits, set by a candidate who went on to become one of our most decorated snipers. You just doubled that record with a rifle you rebuilt from scratch 2 days ago." As word of Elena's performance spread through the facility, candidates and instructors gathered around the scoring station. The electronic display showed her name at the top of the rankings with a score that was mathematically impossible for anyone else to match. Elena had not just qualified for the sniper program, she had redefined what was possible. Later that evening, as Elena was cleaning her rebuilt rifle and preparing for the formal graduation ceremony, Sergeant Williams approached with a serious expression. In his hand, he carried a small digital recorder and what appeared to be a confession letter. "Martinez, we found our saboteur," Williams announced grimly. "Marcus Chen came forward this afternoon after your performance. Apparently, seeing you succeed despite his sabotage broke something inside him. He confessed to tampering with your rifle and provided details about how he did it." Elena looked up from her rifle maintenance, not entirely surprised by the revelation. Chen's behavior and comments over the past few days had made him her primary suspect, but she had been too focused on her performance to pursue the matter. "He said something interesting in his confession," Williams continued. "He claimed he wanted to prove that women didn't belong in the sniper program by ensuring you failed spectacularly. Instead, he forced you to demonstrate capabilities that none of us knew existed. He inadvertently proved the exact opposite of what he intended." Elena considered this irony as she finished cleaning her rebuilt rifle. Chen's malicious act had indeed backfired spectacularly, pushing her to achieve something that might never have happened under normal circumstances. "What happens to him now?" Elena asked. "Court-martial for sabotage and conduct unbecoming. His military career is over," Williams replied. "But that's not your concern anymore. You've got a graduation ceremony to prepare for, and a record that will probably stand for decades." The formal graduation ceremony took place the following morning, with families and military officials present to witness the selection of the new sniper class. Elena's parents had flown in from across the country, their pride evident as they watched their daughter receive the highest honors. Colonel Davidson presented Elena with her sniper qualification badge and announced her record-setting performance to the assembled audience. The rebuilt rifle that had made it all possible sat in a place of honor, its hastily assembled components having delivered perfection when perfection was required. As Elena stood at attention while the national anthem played, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The sabotage that should have ended her dreams had instead forced her to discover reserves of skill and determination she never knew she possessed. The rebuilt rifle beside her represented more than just mechanical expertise. It symbolized the power of refusing to surrender to adversity. In the years that followed, Elena's record of 167 consecutive hits became legendary within the sniper community. The rebuilt rifle was eventually retired to a display case, but its legacy lived on in the inspiration it provided to future snipers facing their own challenges and setbacks. Elena went on to serve with distinction in multiple deployments, her skills honed by that defining moment when everything fell apart, and she chose to rebuild rather than surrender. The lesson she learned during that desperate night of rifle reconstruction stayed with her throughout her career. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from having perfect equipment, but from having the determination to create perfection from the pieces that remain. The saboteur had intended to destroy her dreams, but had instead forged something unbreakable. Elena Martinez had proven that true marksmanship comes not from the rifle, but from the person behind it, and that with enough skill and determination, even a hastily rebuilt weapon can achieve perfection when it matters most.